Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Diane Alfaro, Events Co-Chair of the Democratic Central Committee, and I will be moderating tonight's town hall with District 3 Supervisorial candidate Shebrah Kalantari-Johnson. This is the first of a series of town halls where we will hear from Democratic candidates for supervisor for the 3rd and 4th districts. We'll be starting with an introduction from the candidate, followed by questions from the DCC, then the public, and concluding with closing remarks from the candidate. With that, Ms. Kalantari-Johnson, you have the floor.
Thank you. Hello to everyone here. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here tonight. And thank you for taking this extra time out of your busy lives to ensure that the rest of the community can get to know us candidates. So I appreciate this. So I'll just give a little bit of background about myself. Shebrah Kalantari-Johnson. I currently serve on the Santa Cruz City Council, and of course, I'm a candidate for District 3 Supervisor. My life experience, my educational background, my professional life have really prepared me to serve our community as a supervisor. I'm an immigrant from Iran. My story and my family's story includes experiences of gender, class, and religious injustices. And I really learned the meaning of equity at a very young age. And I worked really hard throughout my adult life to address these inequities. I have a bachelor's in psychology and French. I don't use the French a whole lot, but it was fun getting it. And I have a master's in social work. And my training in psychology has really taught me to listen and understand the experience of individuals, while my social work training has taught me to place that experience in the greater societal systems context. My introduction to social work was really when I worked in San Francisco in the Tenderloin with individuals who were formerly unhoused, living in subsidized housing. And it was there that I was really introduced to the importance and significance of policies and systems and advocacy. And as a master's in social work intern, I worked as a counselor with youth and families at Catholic Charities. And then I also interned at the county jail with the forensics team, serving those individuals who had behavioral health challenges. All of this led me to working as the director of community organizing at United Way, at which I supported youth well-being efforts by addressing substance use prevention and childhood obesity prevention, coordination of services for low-income children and families. And since then, I have begun my consulting business, doing the similar kind of work. So I'm a grant writer. I work on project management in the public health and social services field, and I do strategic planning processes with our local nonprofit organizations. I also co-founded an enterprise 4 years ago. It's based on a framework called Radical Transformational Leadership, and we do leadership capacity building throughout the Bay Area and California. So all of this work has inspired me to serve our community from the capacity of an elected official. I know that I can bring my life experience as an Iranian American, as a woman of color, as an immigrant, my educational background, my career in public health and social services to really understanding the needs of our community and meeting the needs of our community. I've been able to do this on the Santa Cruz City Council through some of my work on racial equity, addressing the challenges around unhoused individuals in our community, and moving forward with investing in our youth through the Children and Youth Bill of Rights and the Children's Fund. So I'll stop there. I can share a lot more, but I'm really excited to be here, and that's just a little glimpse of my background. Oh, you're muted,
yeah,
Diana.
Thank you so much. And just for some housekeeping, if folks can remain on mute until the Q&A period, that will be great. All right, question number 1. Santa Cruz County is unique in many ways, such as its topography, people, biodiversity, and mix of cultures. One of the most unique characteristics about Santa Cruz County is that nearly half of the residents of this county live in the unincorporated areas. Although you will be representing District 3, your decisions will have a major impact on the residents of other districts. Do you know the important issues also facing Districts 1, 2, 4, and 5? If you can mention the top issues, 1 or 2 for each district, that would be great.
Sure. I think that's something unique that I bring as a candidate. I have worked across our county. I've worked in up the North Coast, up into the Pajaro Valley through my consulting work and when I was at United Way. So I understand the unique needs and challenges of each section of our county. And I also understand that we are really one community. So in terms of so all other districts except District 3, was that the question? Okay.
Correct.
So in terms of District 4, I've done a lot of my work in District 4 in South County. I serve on the Community Health Trust Board, and I've been serving for in South County. Health disparities is huge. Do you need me to pause?
Yeah, I need you to repeat that because you were mute. You were frozen for a minute.
Shoot. Am I okay? Am I back on?
You're back on. If you can repeat your District 4 priority or top issue.
Right. I was sharing that I have quite a bit of familiarity with District 4 because I've done a lot of work in District 4. I serve on the Community Health Trust Board, and I've worked with nonprofit organizations such as Digital Nest, CAB, PVPSA. One of the biggest priorities there are the health disparities that we see. We know that the rate of infection and deaths among South County Latinx community members is double than those of their white counterparts in other parts of the county as we faced COVID. Health disparities show up with childhood obesity, diabetes rates, and these are all issues that I've worked on and that I continue to work on as a board member of the Health Trust. So the newly formed hospital district is a huge priority. And I've been able to support those efforts through the Health Trust, my membership as a board member on the Health Trust, as well as serving as a commissioner on the Central California Alliance for Health. Immigration support is a huge challenge also and a need in South County. And that's something I've worked on. I've written grants that have brought in $3-4 million to South County in helping those who are undocumented get on a path of being documented. And that's something that I have personal experience with. My family and I were undocumented for a number of years when we first moved here. The digital divide is a huge challenge in South County. And then the other is criminal justice involvement and the disproportionate number of Latinx youth in particular in our juvenile justice system. That's something I've done in partnership with community organizations such as and in partnership with our juvenile justice system. So those are some of the
Let's take a moment there. Andrew, you're unmuted. So if you can mute, please, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, keep going. All right. So those are just some of the priorities in District 4. And I know that there's a lot of work we can do across our districts and across our city jurisdictions to address those issues. Let's see, district, so moving down into Aptos, I would say Aptos is the district that I'm least familiar with, just to be very honest with all of you. I know that the rail trail is an issue throughout our community, and there are portions of the rail corridor that have infrastructure challenges in Aptos, so I know that that's one of the big issues. And their Aptos District 2 and the southern portion of Aptos do go into District 4. So the needs around ag land and farm workers will probably blend into District 2. But again, District 2 is the community that I need to learn a lot more about. Then moving into District 1, Live Oak. Also, some overlap and similar challenges in Live Oak as is with South County, and that is health disparities among Latinx community, racial inequities. And then I know that there's a big effort in Live Oak with Cradle to Career, so really focusing on education needs of our community members in Live Oak. And then moving into District 5 in the Valley, there are a lot of similarities with the unincorporated areas of District 5 and the unincorporated areas of District 3. And that is, of course, the recovery from the CZU lightning complex fires and the rebuild efforts that are happening right now. The infrastructure needs that have always been there that have been exacerbated now and brought to light now, including roads and power. and connectivity. And then of course, water's an issue everywhere, but certainly in District 5. And I would say the other huge issue sort of across the board is housing across our community. It's climate action and climate response across our community, and homelessness and behavioral health and mental health. Those are three issues that we can see across all of our jurisdictions. So I just said a whole lot, and I'll pause there and see if you have any follow-up questions for me.
Well, your last response may be related to our next question. What are the top 3 issues facing this office?
It's such a hard question to narrow down to top 3, but I will definitely say climate action and response, and in particular with some portions of our county, emergency preparedness and recovery around fire, homelessness and behavioral health. You know, again, as someone who's worked in San Francisco's Tenderloin and worked with youth and young adults with lived experience in our community, I understand the complexities there. And I understand that it's very difficult to make policy decisions and to provide services, and we all have to do our part. This isn't a City of Santa Cruz issue. This isn't a South County issue, North County issue. This is an entire community issue, and we cannot get anywhere unless we're all working together. On my time at City Council, I've really pushed forward. I've advocated and pushed for services such as safe sleeping, transitional shelters, safe parking, and to not do that in a vacuum, to really talk to our county counterparts and to coordinate with different cities such as Watsonville, to have an effort that we're working in concert with each other. So addressing the crisis on the ground as well as the upstream. 30% of our last point in time count were transition age youth. And so really thinking upstream about how we address some of the youth that are coming out of our systems like child welfare and criminal justice system. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent on this issue, but other housing issue, other priority issue is housing, as I mentioned before, allowing for both higher density housing in portions of our community and where it makes sense and it won't impact our landscape in our community, and also just looking at our outdated housing elements and our zoning ordinances. So those are some of the big ones, and of course connected to that is economic vitality and recovery. And I will just say all of these policy issues really require us to have an equity lens that we approach things with. So that would provide the framework in which I would address these issues.
All right, thank you. Moving on to question number 3, related. So this is a 2-part question. And my next couple questions are related to housing, and I will break it up in 2 parts. I will be asking you the first question, hear your response, and then follow up with another question. For my first question, in January of this year, AMBAG voted on the allocation methodology for the 6th cycle of the housing element. The methodology chosen allocated units based on affirmatively furthering fair housing, which is a factor to determine who lacks access to opportunity and address inequities amongst protected class groups. The County of Santa Cruz, not including the cities, received an allocation of 4,634 units. Do you believe that this is a fair and achievable allocation?
Tough question. Well, I think that it's a lot. It's a big number. And the fact of the matter is, we as a society, as a state, as a community are growing. And so whether it's fair or not, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's fair in that we have to all do our part and we have to address the growing population that we have. It's fair in that it will allow, hopefully, for a diverse and inclusive community. Is it achievable? We all have to do our part. The cities, all 4 cities, the unincorporated areas, we all have to do our part to make it achievable. We can start with our housing element. ensure that we have enough affordable housing sites that will help us meet our RHNA goals. I can speak for the city more because that's where my experience lies, but that the affordable housing is where we fall way short in meeting our current RHNA goals. So ensuring that our housing element has the components needed so that we can meet those goals. After adopting our housing element, revising our zoning ordinance to help facilitate the approval of housing projects on sites that we've identified. So there are some policies that need to be updated for us to be able to achieve that. Pursuing planning reform, identifying and addressing some of the red tape that we've had that I think folks in the planning world would also admit to. And this includes fast tracking for projects that are 100% affordable housing. So we really got to look at what are the current blocks and barriers to helping us achieve these. And then pursuing mixed use inclusionary housing that allow for walkable communities that are along our transportation corridors, looking at the intersectionality between our transportation policies and our housing policies. So it's not all in a vacuum. So I hope that answered your question.
Okay, my follow-up to that is, as of June 2021, the Housing Authority has 12,678 applicant households on the Housing Choice Voucher waitlist. The waitlist is currently closed. Do you stand by your previous response? And is there a creative way to find homes for the many households on this waitlist?
I do stand by my previous response, and some of the responses I gave earlier, I think would address that. Focusing and prioritizing affordable housing. I think we also need to increase the resources for affordable housing. I know that some of you here, Diana included, know how challenging it is to say, yes, we're committed to affordable housing, but then to make the financing work is really challenging. So looking at bond measures or looking at special taxes, and ensuring that we have some set aside. So I know that the county is right now considering a sales tax increase in November. So without jeopardizing a general sales tax, seeing how we can designate a certain portion of these revenues to go towards affordable housing. So getting really creative about funding for affordable housing, I think would need to be a priority, looking to outside resources, advocating with our state legislators. And while doing this, really ensuring transparency and community engagement to really understand how the community wants to see our housing projects and our affordable housing projects unfold.
All right, thank you. And then the last question from the DCC before we go to the public is, do you support the Greenway Initiative? Why or why not? Please respond from both a district specific and a county-wide perspective.
I do not support the Greenway Initiative, and I do not support it because it basically closes our option for a future alternate mode of transportation on the rail corridor. Some of these disparities that I talked about earlier around South County, I think are directly related. It's all connected. So if we're sitting in our cars and we don't have access to other parts of our county where we may be working, then our health suffers from that. So, and if we don't have opportunity to connect our communities, then those inequities and the racial disparities are more highlighted. So for all of those reasons, I think that we really need to invest in connecting our county from North County to South County and up the North Coast. And I know there are challenges in building a passenger light rail. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's a community benefit. It's a public service. And if we value that, if we value community benefit and communities and the public service, then we need to invest in it. And we can put our brilliant minds together across our county to figure out the infrastructure challenges, to figure out the financing challenges. But there's too much riding on us as a community. And I didn't even mention that this is a huge climate action response. So it's being united as a community. It's addressing health disparities, and it's addressing our number one source of carbon emissions, and that's cars on the road.
All right, thank you. So we will now move on to questions from those in attendance. So if you have a question, members of the public, please raise your hand and we will acknowledge you. or you can also put them in the chat. So let's start with Ms. Steiner.
Thank you, Diana. Hi, Shebrah. Very nice to meet you.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi. You're going to get a nice endorsement tonight, by the way, if you haven't already gotten the phone call. But at any rate, and thank you for answering the question about rail trail. But tell me if I'm wrong, and I hope I'm wrong. Did you take $500 for your campaign from Bud Colligan?
Yes, I did, and I can address that.
Thank you.
Wrong. Yes. I'm glad you brought that up. I met with Mr. Colligan and other supporters of Greenway throughout my campaign. I dove deep into this issue. I read articles from both sides. I met with staunch Greenway supporters. I met with staunch Fort supporters to really try to educate myself, because I think as an elected official, I owe that to the community to make an informed decision. And when I made the informed decision, what I believe is an informed decision, that a rail and trail is the best way for us to proceed as a community, I went back to Mr. Colligan as well as other Greenway supporters and shared my perspective. I shared that I have signed on to No Way Greenway, that I've endorsed No Way Greenway, and I've offered to return their contribution, and I've offered to have their names taken off of my endorsement list. And the overwhelming response I got was, you're willing to meet with us, you're willing to talk to us, and that's what we want to see in leadership. We don't want to see polarization. We don't want people to shut the door. And you know, they're not happy that I'm not in support, but they understand my position and they're willing to still support me as a candidate.
Excellent. Thank you. You got my endorsement about an hour ago. Thank you, Shebrah.
Thank you.
Oh,
right.
wow.
I just wanted, Ms. Hockman, I noticed that you lowered your hand, but do you still have a question?
At a certain point, I'll remember it.
Okay, we'll move on to Mr. Golden Crayons.
Thanks, Diana, and thanks, Shebrah. Thanks for being here. So as you know, as a sitting city council member, there are currently about 2,000 families who applied for eviction protection under the Housing is Key program. Unfortunately, those protections are going to expire on March 31st in a couple of weeks. And so we're facing the possible calamity of sort of a mass eviction proceedings happening. And I'm wondering, either from your standpoint on the city council or potentially as a supervisor, how do we prevent this kind of disaster from happening? What are your thoughts?
That's a great question. Actually, one of my opponents and I, Councilmember Cummings, he and I worked together under his leadership to ask our city to approve advocating for extension of and support of this at the state level. So I think one of the number one things we need to do is work with our state legislators to ensure that this safeguard, and in particular right now when folks are just really suffering and having a hard time, is not taken away. So that's number one. We are exploring at the city council to see what can be done at the council level, and hopefully at our next city council meeting we'll have more information on that. I can't speak further than that, but we know it's an issue, and I think this is something that we the council majority would agree on, and we're trying to address it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We have time for 2 more questions from the public. Going once, going twice. All right. So with that, Ms. Kalantari-Johnson, you have 2 minutes for your closing remarks.
Okay. Well, first, I want to thank you all again. This is a lot of work on your part, not just tonight, but all the work that you do for the DCC every day of every year that you serve. So thank you for your service. And to participate in this way, in this democratic process is so meaningful for me as someone from Iran who witnessed and experienced voter suppression and really a lack of democracy. This is really important and meaningful. So I guess I just want to say that I'm ready for this job. I don't need a new job. I'm going to continue to do the work in the community because I've been doing it for decades. I love serving my community either as a board member or a grant writer or community organizer. And I really know that I can contribute at scale as a supervisor. So I hope you'll give me the opportunity. I hope to have your endorsement and your support. And I hope to work with you anyway, because like I said, I'm going to be here. I've been here for 20 years and I'm going to keep doing the work. And I guess I should also say that I'm raising my family here. So I've got 2 boys, 12 and 14, Dariush and Cheyenne. And this is our home. This is our community and has been since moving here in 95.
All right. I want to acknowledge Ms. Hockman. Ms. Kalantari-Johnson, do you mind taking this final question?
Not at all.
All right,
It's
Ms.
short.
Hockman, go ahead.
Thanks, Diana. How old were you when your family brought you to the United States as an immigrant?
I was 7 when we left and 8 when we came here. So we went through Turkey and Germany and it took us nearly a year. But I can save that for the next forum because it's a long story.
All right, thank you so much. So thank you, Ms. Kalantari-Johnson, for giving us your time tonight. And we will hold our next town hall tonight at 7 with District 4 candidate Felipe Hernandez. So thank you, and we'll see some of you or most of you, hopefully all of you, at 7 p.m. tonight.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and have a good night. Bye.
Hi, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Diane Alfaro, events co-chair of the Democratic Central Committee, and I'll be moderating tonight's town hall with District 4 supervisorial candidate Felipe Hernandez. This is the second of a series of town halls where we will hear from Democratic candidates for supervisor for the 3rd and 4th districts. We'll be starting with an introduction from the candidate, followed by questions from the DCC, then the public, and concluding with closing remarks from the candidate. With that, Mr. Hernandez, you have the floor.
Thank you. So my name is Felipe Hernandez. I'm a former mayor, and current Cabrillo College trustee. I was born and raised here in Watsonville, and my parents stressed the value of service to our community. My parents were salt of the earth. My father was a apple picker from 1960 to 1991, and my mother was a cannery worker here in Watsonville, and taught me about leadership and courage by taking part in the Watsonville cannery strikes with the Teamsters here in 85 and 86, one of the longest running strikes in the nation's history. And I took those values to heart. As a young man, I enlisted in the service to serve our country during Desert Storm. I came back home. I attended Cabrillo College. I then earned a degree in community studies at UC Santa Cruz. I worked for the United Farm Workers for 3 years as a political organizer. Then I went on to work with SEIU International for about 9 years as an external organizer. I got back home, got active in our community, first as a library commissioner, and then as a planning commissioner. And before moving on to Watsonville City Council in 2012, and then becoming mayor in 2016. Together there, we made a lot of progress. We, brought jobs into our community, affordable housing, all were protecting our community values. During my time on the council, we pushed a lot, things like the first project labor agreement in California, the first comprehensive straw ban, the first comprehensive plastic bag ban. We brought city workers out of furloughs and into fair contracts. That was after the recession that we had. And as a supervisor, I want to work with all my colleagues to make sure that South County gets its fair share from the Board of Supervisors and gets its equitable share from the Board of Supervisors. I want to continue to support development of recreational facilities for youth, such as a skate park, the 2 BMX pump tracks that I spearheaded, and continue new projects like soccer fields that are in the works, open space, dog parks. And I want to work with the board and staff to find regional solutions to sustainable transportation the need for affordable housing, and to relieve homelessness and quality hospital systems that touch us every day. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So here's our first question. Santa Cruz County is unique in many ways, such as its topography, people, biodiversity, and mix of cultures. One of the most unique characteristics about Santa Cruz County is that nearly half of the residents of this county live in unincorporated areas. Although you will be representing District 4, your decisions will have a major impact on the residents of other districts. Do you know the important issues also facing Districts 1, 2, 3, and 5? And if you can mention the top issues for each district, that would be great.
You know, I think District 4 is sort of a microcosm of the entire county, and we do share some of the issues as a county-wide, like some of the rural roads and some of the homelessness issues, and we all should be. It should be a priority for every district. It should be affordable housing too, and like I said, homelessness as well. But I would start off numerically with District 1. You know, I think it's been in the news, I guess. But you know, some of the NIMBYism, I guess you would say, for building. And I just mentioned homelessness. Some of the NIMBYism has been around that area in Manu's district about housing for homelessness. And, you know, I know that we've recently done the Homekey project at the Red Roof Inn in Watsonville, but I guess they're doing new construction there in District 1. They're trying to do new construction, and it's in a sort of close to a residential neighborhood that's been, I guess, causing concern for the neighborhood. So that's been one issue, is doing in that district, trying to house the homeless. And it should, in my opinion, you know, it should be, we should be thankful that we're housing the homeless in that district as well. The other issue has been ongoing, the whole rental issue, the Airbnb issue, and I think that, you know, that'll probably continue as well. Hospitals have been recently on the top of my list, and given that we have the hospital district going on, and I know that they've got their Kaiser expansion, so I know that that's been going on over by Aptos High School area. So that's been a big issue for District 1 as well. And in terms of District 2, Zach Friends, I think we share a lot of the common issues there. The hospital district is one. The Pajaro flood zone is one. Rural roads. District 2 has a lot more of the rural roads in our Green Valley, Corralitos, which is adjacent to us, Aptos area as well. But, you know, I think they also have the same kind of issues that some of the areas that District 1 has with the Airbnb rentals. But I think I watched some of those, what's her name? Steinbrenner bring up the rural roads a lot with her at the board meetings. But, you know, he has his hands full there. In terms of District 3, which is a very diverse district where it has some city and then some rural areas. But, you know, I think the CZU fire recovery is probably one of the big ones that in more rural areas out of the downtown Santa Cruz area is probably one of the big ones that affects that district. And, you know, literally that CZU fire has affected everyone, right? Even District 4, mine, where we can't get the permits fast enough that people that live there are literally taking their checks and just buying houses outright in South County. And people here can't afford to get houses. And so we got people from, both Bruce's and Ryan's district that are coming to South County and just purchasing houses outright over here and pricing people out, outbidding people here in South County that live here, that are from here, that are trying to purchase a house. So it's affecting everyone, right? That and beyond the homes, there's the infrastructure, right? The roads that need to be repaired, and we just talked about that at the previous, at 2 RTC meetings ago, about rural roads, and also some of the water that we're now just starting to talk about, some of the water issues with that area. Coming down south, there's some of the homelessness issues more in town, that in that district as well. And then just managing the relationship with the city, county, UCSC is the other thing that has to be balanced. District 5, I talked about some of those issues that District 3 has in the northern part with the CZU fire recovery and some of the homes and roads and infrastructure and water. Bruce has the brunt of it in that district, in those rural areas, with the homes destroyed, the infrastructure, and then the rains that came after, and really devastated the infrastructure and roads afterwards, even more so than the fire. But I think the other issue that's going on that I'm kind of aware of over here in South County, that I hear a lot about, is the cannabis issue, right? With both water rights and environmental issues with the cannabis in that part of the district. And I'm sure that keeps Bruce up late at night in that area. But I think those are some of the prominent issues, but we do share in common some of the issues that I said before. We should all keep affordable housing on top of our list, every district, because everyone needs affordable housing. Like I said, we got people from as far as Bruce's district that are coming into Watsonville to purchase homes. So we know the need is in every district, right? So,
All right. So that kind of takes us into our second question. What are the top 3 issues facing this office?
I would say number 1 is affordable housing, right? And we got a skewed formula where a person could make 78,000 plus and still qualify for affordable housing, and those limits are supposed to go up this summer. It's really time to fight to keep our residents from being priced out of their hometown. It's the need is everywhere, not just in South County. And I think I've been, trying to think of different ways that we can address this issue. It's really a regional issue where one city and the county alone can't do it. We have to work together. All the cities and the county has to work together. But I would start by streamlining, not just streamlining, but expediting and streamlining the building permit process, lowering the fees for both affordable housing and accessory dwelling units, and those affected by the CZU fire. I've heard estimates that less than 15% have gotten their permits for the folks in the CZU fire, and that's just, it's amazing that little has gotten their permits. So we got to work as a region to bring affordable housing into our county. I want to work with my CAO and fellow supervisors and with all our cities on updating or creating inclusionary housing ordinances. Many cities now have 20 or 25% affordable housing ordinances. And our city has something that's called an intergovernmental committee, where we meet with the county, our supervisor, and different county agencies or different governmental agencies to discuss issues like this. We discuss different issues. I'd like to see something created for every district to talk to their local city, every representative to talk about these issues, because it's not being discussed. I want to work with our county and cities to create a uniform, streamlined process and to reduce fees for both affordable housing and ADUs. And lastly, if I would consider supporting a countywide measure similar to Santa Cruz's empty home tax to fund affordable housing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. My next couple questions are related to housing, and I will be asking in 2 parts. I'll be asking you the first question, hear your response, and then follow up with another question. For the first question, in January of this year, AMBAG voted on the allocation methodology for the 6th cycle of the housing element. The methodology chosen allocated units based on affirmatively furthering fair housing, which is a factor to determine who lacks access to opportunity and address inequities amongst protected class groups. The County of Santa Cruz, not including its cities, received an allocation of 4,634 units. Do you believe that this is a fair and achievable allocation?
I think it's fair, and I think there's barriers for it to be achievable. There's certain, I know that for example, in the 4th district, there's set to be growth limitations, growth boundaries that limit further housing. And there's, I hate to nitpick, but there's some barriers that both nonprofit developers and for-profit developers have trying to do some of the infill where it adds to the cost. After the pandemic, there's already been additional costs for just construction costs. And that's why I talk about lowering fees a lot. And, for affordable housing, because there is some limitations. We have to find ways to even lower fees even further, because to do infill, it does add more to the cost when you're actually purchasing a building just to bring it down and build new affordable housing. So, it's going to take, I think, additional help from our legislators to further streamline and find additional grants for affordable housing, I think, to actually meet those demands. And there's a lot of good bills out there that are happening. I think that some of the stuff to do with the transit-oriented development that actually streamlines the process is good. But I think, funding for nonprofit developers is going to be a necessity, right, to make it happen, to meet those demands. And I think that we're going to have to meet that challenge, we're going to have to come together as elected officials, nonprofit developers, even for-profit developers, to come together and let our legislators know that we still need help to meet these demands, that we need some sort of funding, grants, matching funds, or whatever it may take to make that happen. The other thing that is a possibility, and that Monterey school districts are looking at, and that we're kind of looking at as a study too, is Cabrillo College. When I say we, it's Cabrillo College. We're doing a housing study, and I think that there's other districts or other governmental agencies that are looking at other governmental agencies that are still looking at housing, providing housing too. So we're looking at both student housing and workforce housing for a lot of our staff and employees. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at. I know one of the school districts in Monterey area is also doing the same thing. I think they're a step ahead of us, but we're doing our housing study right now to look at that and find ways that we can create housing as a college district. So, I think that other school districts, because we're all having a hard time finding employees, the county, cities, school districts, and the number one problem is the cost of living in this county. And so to find solutions we're looking at creating housing as a college district. So those are things that the other solutions, right, that we can do to meet those numbers, those RENA numbers.
All right, so my follow-up question is, as of June 2021, the Housing Authority has 12,670 applicant households on their housing choice voucher waitlist. The waitlist is currently closed. Do you stand by your previous response? And is there a creative way to find homes for the many households on this waitlist?
Well, yeah, I stand by my previous response. Definitely. I think that, yeah, like, I mean, I stand by previous response. It's gonna be a tough road ahead of us. And we do need everyone's help. Like I said, we need our legislators' help. We need to bring all our partners together and make sure that we can create this housing. It's, like I said, we're gonna have to streamline the process and allow for this housing to be built. And here's the other thing is eventually we're gonna have to go to bat and really just take a stand with some of the NIMBYism as well too. I know a lot of times electeds want to stay away from that, but I think it's time that we really just roll up our sleeves and push through some of these projects that we have. And not just in certain areas, we have to push these projects in every part of the district, all 5 districts, right? Make sure that we push through affordable housing, workforce housing in all parts of the county, because what affects, District 5 affects District 1. We got this workforce in South County that drives every day on the highway, and it clogs that Highway 1. I'm sure that a lot of them would like to live in that area in Santa Cruz where they work every day in the tourism industry, and vice versa. We got people that can't afford Santa Cruz because we got people coming in from Silicon Valley, and they have to, and they want to live in they have to buy in Watsonville. And so, I mean, it's a two-way street. So every jurisdiction, every city, every supervisorial district has to create affordable housing because we're all in this together. We all have to meet our RENA numbers. Every city.
Thank you. Okay, question 4. Do you support the Greenway Initiative? Why or why not? And please respond from both a district specific and a county-wide perspective.
I don't support the Greenway Initiative. I've been a staunch, I unequivocally support the rail and trail. I've been a staunch supporter of the rail and trail, and I oppose any rail banking and rail abatement. I've made my opinion very vocal. Coming from the 4th district, I think that it really affects our local economy here in the 4th district, where we have a lot of job providers here that rely on the freight, first of all, of that rail line. And if any part of that freight is affected, it affects our local freight providers here from Big Creek, Agron, Martinelli's, and many of the freight users. So that, is kind of my first, response. But, we also have the countywide, which recently people talked a lot about Roaring Camp and tourism, how it affects them. But I think overall, I have this vision where we have, I talked about the roads being clogged, and I think my overall vision is that we have to reduce greenhouse gases. We have to reduce vehicle miles traveled, and the only way to do that is to simply get off the highway, get off the cars. And so I think that providing alternative modes of transportation is the only way to do that. And to have rail as a alternative and sustainable mode of transportation would be, my vision, utopian vision of the way to do that. So that's, for me to have my county vision is to have that multimodal sustainable transportation with rail and trail.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to questions from the public. So if you have any questions, members of the public, please raise your hand or put them in the chat. And we'll start with Ms. Hockman. Please unmute and ask your question.
Thanks, Diana. Perfect timing. Hi, Felipe. So
Is my camera on here? Okay, yes.
speaking of greenhouse gases, at a recent RTC, Regional Transportation Commission meeting, where you are a supervisor's appointee, you voted with Supervisor Koenig to allocate 100% of the federal funds coming into the county for public transportation. You joined him and 4 other people to allocate 100% of those funds to road repair. Could you please share with all of us how that makes you a labor champion for all those unionized metro workers, and how that can cause you to be a champion to eliminate greenhouse gases when some of the money that the metro was counting on was to purchase an electric bus? Thanks.
Yes. So first of all, you know, I'm the alternate, and most of the time, almost nearly all the time, Supervisor Caput allows me to go on my own judgment on things. There's very few times that he sits down and tells me like certain ways to vote. That was one of the few times he wanted me to vote a certain way. I met with several people, the public works director and different folks. And I think that you talked about the vote count. Everybody on the supervisors voted a certain way. And what I was, you know, for me, it was, they talked about that funding going to rural roads that were affected, emergency funding for rural roads that were affected by the CZU fire, but also rural roads in South County. And so we've had a lot of recent complaints and a lot of calls dealing with rural roads, specifically roads like Paulson Green Valley, Murphy Crossing, Murphy Road in South County. And so those are some of the roads that we've had to address that, you know, we couldn't get any funding for. And they've been basically deferred maintenance on these roads. And we've gotten constant complaints over the years that we've gotten for these roads. And so, I mean, those are some of the things that led to this decision. But I think that the brunt of it was in some of the people affected by the CZU fires that got the roads were damaged, not just by the fire itself, but the rains afterwards that damaged some of the infrastructure and some of the roads. But again, you know, I was the alternate on this vote, and I, you know, certain times the supervisor wants a certain vote, and so, you know, I took that vote. But that was the reasoning behind it, though, too, to deal with the deferred infrastructure of the rural roads.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? All right, Mr. Goldenkrantz.
Yeah, thanks, Diana, and thanks, Felipe. Good to see you. The county, in part of the response to COVID, when the state put in protection for renters against evictions because of, you know, COVID circumstances, those protections expire at the end of this month. And in Santa Cruz County, there are over 2,000 families who have applied and had their applications for protection accepted, but who have not yet been funded or notified of their funding. So that means at the end of this month, we face a potential calamity in which, in the worst case, 2,000 evictions could get processed on April 1st. And so I'm wondering, as a potential supervisor, would you support either extending the moratorium or authorizing funds for things like mediation so that if a landlord does go into an eviction proceeding, that it would require some sort of legal service before that would happen. So back to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. When I was on the city council, I led the effort for the first moratorium that we did, and then I also led the effort for the extension after the deadline fell through for the state the state moratorium one that Gavin had. We did the extension as well, and you know it was. I learned after the second one that it was you know, even though it became controversial here locally with a lot of people in real estate, people in that industry, you know, I still moved forward to support the second extension as well. And as a supervisor, I would also support a more to extend a moratorium as well as a supervisor.
Thanks.
All right. Any other questions? We have time for one more. Okay. Seeing none. Mr. Hernandez, you have 2 minutes for your closing remarks.
So, you know, I just, you know, I want to start off with my views and stance on affordable housing. You know, I was, like I said before, I was like 2.5 years as a planning commissioner, and I did serve 9 years as a council member. And I voted yes. And those 9 years and 2.5 years as a planning commissioner, I voted yes on every affordable housing project. I voted yes on every workforce housing project during my time as a planning commissioner and during my time as a council member. You know, the 4th supervisorial district has only had one Latino supervisor in its history. Unfortunately, he wouldn't be able to join the club. He was a Republican. Watsonville right now is about, you know, 85% Latino. And, you know, I always think that local government should reflect its population. And, you know, I've been a lifetime Democrat, a lifetime union supporter, and not just during elections, but it's, you know, it's always in me. You know, I bleed red, I bleed Democrat. I was born into a union household, and as a child, I was on the picket lines at the cannery with my mother. And one of the most powerful memories that I remember is watching my mom talk to workers at a Lucky Store, UFC workers at a Lucky Store, and then walk over and talk to some truck drivers, some Teamster truck drivers, and then watching them unload the refrigerated food right on the street on Freedom Boulevard. And I thought to myself as a young 11, 12-year-old, you know, this is what solidarity and this is what union power is about. And whenever I hear, you know, people say, well, Watsonville's a union town, I always think back to that memory, you know. And since then, you know, I've become I was a UFW political organizer, SEIU international external organizer. And I want to continue to be a progressive Democratic champion, labor champion. I want to continue to attend political events. I want to continue to attend social justice rallies and labor actions. And I want to continue to be the progressive Democratic champion and labor champion as your 4th district supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hernandez, for giving us your time tonight. And we will hold our next town hall on Wednesday at 6 p.m. with District 3 candidate Thomas Ramos. So with that, thank you all and have a great night.